I am 7 episodes in and I have not tackled a game for the beloved original NES yet. This travesty will not go on much longer because today I'm taking a gander at an overlooked game from the console's heyday, Cobra Triangle, on this week's adequately written episode of Sequest DSV. British video game developer Rare Limited was quite the asset in Nintendo's camp, lending their talents to such high-regarded titles as RC Pro-Am, Battletoads, Donkey Kong Country, GoldenEye, and the thrill-a-minute game of the century, TABOO: The Sixth Sense. Oh, and did I mention Anticipation? My apologies. And of course, the game we're discussing today, Cobra Triangle. In this venerable action title, Rare applied their RC Pro-Am formula to a speedboat and sprinkled in a power-up system similar to Konami's popular Gradius series, and for the most part, it works quite well. The object of Cobra Triangle, like most games, is to not die. Maybe get a high score so you could brag about it at your high school reunion. You'll have to complete 25 levels, each consistent of separate goals. In the race to the finish levels, you merely just have to get to the finish line. There's no real race involved, just keep yourself in one piece and don't let the other boats hassle you too much. Some boats have pods in tow. Destroy them to collect it. It should be noted that there's a fork in the course that determines the order in which you tackle the challenges. Whichever you choose, it's a fairly easy way to get acclimated with the controls. The Collected Pods courses are useful to start boosting your boat's stats and weapons. More on that later. It's somewhat harmless, but there are ways of hurting yourself, so mind the hazards while you're figuring out how you want to spend your pods. The Dispose of mine levels are actually quite fun. You have to take the mines and bring them to a point where they can be destroyed. The enemy boats don't pose any real threats to your vessel, but they'll take chase once you grab one of the mines. It's a fun game of cat and mouse, but do remember that there are guns on the banks that will bust your chops, especially in later levels. The Guard the People levels are my least favorite. Here, the game turns you into a defender trying to keep the enemy boats from kidnapping the swimmers. It seems easy, but the UFOs will stun you with their missiles, leaving the hapless bathers easy pickings. It's not worth chasing after the boats, so it usually ends up being an exercise in spinning the boat while firing wildly. Fry the Monster are the game's boss battles that occur every 5 levels. You've got the box art sea serpent, a feisty crab, and more I've yet to see since I'm not terribly very good at the game. The task here is like every other video game. Defeat the boss before he defeats you. Your boat doesn't exactly turn on a dime, so some strategy will need to be employed if you hope to survive. The Shoot the Targets game is a score bonus level. You're pretty much on autopilot here. Just shoot as many targets as you possibly can. Shoot them all down and you'll get the one-up hanging out just out of reach after the finish line. Reach the finish is where you'll really start to feel some hurt. You have to navigate a narrow river full of hazards upstream. Oftentimes, you'll find your timing completely off. You're going to get pulled backwards while you're still trying to find the momentum needed to pass an obstacle. You'll also be fired upon by cannons and the occasional airplane, but they're the least of your worries. Especially problematic are those whirlpools. Not only will they impede your progress and deal some serious damage, but also change your direction, as whirlpools are inclined to do, I suppose. While Reach the Finish is a challenge, the Jump the Waterfall level is likely to cost you more than a few boats, unless you're really good at the game. The description is a misnomer because it's actually waterfalls. Don't even ask me how that's physically possible, but no matter. The object is to get to the finish line. But there's shifting currents to contend with, along with those relentless whirlpools. And just to make things interesting, the ramps will also be moving back and forth. There's little time to adjust, so sometimes luck will have to get you to the goal line. As I mentioned, you have a power-up system to help you out along the way. Pods collected will change which power-up you can activate by their numbers shown from left to right. Turbo is a one-off improvement that will give your boat a permanent increase in speed. Fire, as the name implies, will improve your ship's firepower. Speed will make your boat incrementally faster. Missiles is pretty self-explanatory also, but the more you activate it, the more effective they'll be. Force will give your boat protection for a limited time, and replenish your energy as well, but always seems to exhaust itself when you really do need it. Like I alluded to, it's very much like Gradius. However, unlike Gradius, any improvements you made will be kept, even if you die, even if you continue. There are nice little graphical touches throughout the game, like the horizontally rolling speedometer, the little danger speaker that beeps incessantly when you're about to get air-bombed, and how when you complete a level, your boat suddenly sprouts a propeller and flies away to the next challenge. You know, one could ask why that propeller is not used on the waterfall levels or the reach to finish levels, but it's probably best not to question video game logic. The boat handles quite well, even with the digital controls. You may find yourself oversteering a bit at the beginning, but with some practice, you'll be able to maneuver yourself away from the river banks with confidence. And yeah, the challenge is quite high here. You start the game with 3 lives and get 3 continues. Often, death is cheap, and you'll be able to pick up where you last left off. However, as you get further in the game, the sight of your boat exploding into a mushroom cloud will be an unfortunate, familiar sight. But tough doesn't mean not fun, and personally, I never felt the game was being especially unfair. Sure, the waterfall levels do try my patience quite a bit, but they're the exception rather than the norm. Besides, the game is often benevolent enough to give you a breather level after the more brutal ones. Cobra Triangle is a relative sleeper, but it deserves to be part of any solid NES library alongside the quintessential classics. And this may be the only way you could actually legally play it. In 2002, Rare Limited was purchased by Microsoft to become a first-party publisher for the Xbox line of consoles, and thus the likelihood of their Nintendo contributions being released on the Virtual Console, with the exceptions of those with Nintendo-owned characters, such as Donkey Kong Country, are slim to nil. The good news is this game is rather inexpensive, so hook up the old Nintendo Entertainment System and fire this puppy up. I do not think you'll be disappointed. This is Dave for TV Games, and allow me to play you out with some terrible game show music. Cobra Triangle, on this week's adequately written episode of Sequest DSV. I'm gonna do that one more time.
That was good. How I do it.